we're going to get started here. Christian, if you wouldn't mind moving forward like 2 slides, and then there we go. So, all right, everyone, we are super excited today because today's webinar is on generative AI in marketing. This is a topic that's on basically every marketer's mind these days. And like we said, it's a great day for it, being ChatGPT's 1-year birthday. It came out exactly 1 year ago today. So it's a very, very good time to be talking about this. And what I'm most excited about for today's webinar is that we've got a great approach to the topic of generative AI today. We're not scratching the surface here. We're not going to, talk about which prompt to use or 10 ways to get more out of ChatGPT. That's all great, but we're not going to really focus on kind of internet clickbait. You see kind of those AI influencers out there posting. We're going to actually go pretty deep. We're going to look at a really big picture of how generative AI is just so much more than clicking a button and writing content. We're going to talk about how it can be the actual backbone of your data strategy. And there's really no one better to help us go deep on this subject than Christian Ward, who is joining me today, the EVP and Chief Data Officer at Yext, which is an AI-led digital experience platform. Christian, welcome. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here and great to have the discussion today. Again, on the auspicious birthday, I just think it's outstanding. So the timing could have been better.
It really could not have been better. And for anyone who is new to our audience, my name is Mike Kaput. I'm our Chief Content Officer here at Marketing AI Institute. We are the host of this webinar, and I am personally responsible for using AI to grow our traffic, leads, and sales. So every day I'm kind of on the front lines, just like a lot of the people on this call, as a marketing practitioner and also a marketing AI practitioner, someone who's daily testing, trying to figure out dozens of different AI tools to increase the productivity and performance of our marketing and our business. So Christian, if you can move forward just 1 slide, I do want to very quickly talk about what we do here at Marketing AI Institute, because we've had just such a surge of interest in the last 12 months in our business, but we've actually been making AI approachable and actionable for marketers and business leaders since way back in 2016. So we do that through 3 areas of our business: media, events, and education. And across these areas, we're actually a leading source of industry education. We've actually helped over the last couple of years, tens of thousands of business leaders understand, pilot, and scale AI technology. And Christian, if you can move us forward 1 more. I do want to note that as part of all that work we do at Marketing AI Institute, we run this monthly webinar series, of which this webinar is the latest. So if you go to the link on your screen, you can actually see dozens of different webinars that we've done over the past several years, all available for free on demand, where we cover the hottest topics in AI with market-leading experts. And last but not least, before we dive in here, I want to invite everyone on this webinar to the next huge event we have, which is our annual Marketing AI Conference, MACON, which happens in person next year from September 10th to the 12th. This past year's conference in July 2023 actually brought more than 700 business and AI leaders to our hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, for 3 days of incredible content and connections. If you are looking to build a competitive advantage with AI, this is honestly the best and easiest and quickest way to do it. Join us at MACON. You can look at maicon.ai for more details. So as we get started here, I just want to remind you, please drop any questions you have in the Q&A or in the chat sections. Me and Christian are going to have a great discussion at the end of his slides, and we will address as many audience questions as we can during that time. So with that, Christian, I'm going to let you take it away and take us on a tour of what we need to understand when it comes to generative AI.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Mike. And I will shamelessly plug Macon. I had an outstanding time. We had a great private dinner with you and a bunch of the speakers and a bunch of the representatives. And I just think it's a phenomenal place, not only to learn what people are building, but also really to just get a sense of what are some of the big thinkers out there talking about. You had Professor Ethan Malik on stage, which was a highlight. It was just an outstanding event. So everyone should definitely, I will certainly be at the next one as well. But today, as you said, when we started, we're 1 year into this ChatGPT thing, but to know that, Marketing AI Institute has been around since 2016, it shows you that this has all been around for a long time. I don't think anyone was as forward thinking as you and Paul were and Kathy in setting it up. But the reality is it's now sort of the zeitgeist. It's in every conversation we have. I am amazed. I travel all the time for work, but when I see in an airport like a 9-year-old asking their parents for access to ChatGPT, you're just like, oh my God, this is insane. But my role at Yext as Chief Data Officer is helping companies understand the knowledge that they have, the data assets, the entities in their knowledge graph, and what they can do with it. So I'm a chief data officer that works with the clients in market. And so what I like to do is roll up, when it comes to generative AI, what are all the themes that anyone from healthcare, the World Health Organization, where we power their graph and we power people like Lego and all these other great brands out there, what are they thinking about? And what's interesting in healthcare, financial services, retail? It doesn't matter the industry. There's actually 3 key themes that I want to run through with everyone today. Now, the first is, I think this is going to be understatement of the year, but we're going to change marketing forever in the next few years. And I know that sounds auspicious as a goal, but the reality is marketing has been monologues for decades. Think of the internet. We're just pushing out monologue after monologue as brands and businesses. Well, marketing is going to change to a fully dialogue-based interaction. You'll still do marketing for sort of awareness, but when it comes to actually engaging with consumers, we're going to talk a lot about what conversational AI and really generative AI does for that. The next is, great, so what do I do? How do I get ready for this? And most of our clients and most of the people I work with, we're promoting this concept of a lean data approach. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. But it's really the only way to prepare. And that's to say, for almost everyone on this call and for us, our 2 companies, the reality is we're probably not one of the, let's say 10 big firms that are going to build the next AI, right? The reality is most of us are going to take our data in some way and make it available to AI to use. So in that sense, this is really sort of a statement of your AI strategy is really just your data strategy. And so people have been talking about data strategy for many years, but the way you're actually going to enable AI in your business and with your brand is going to be through your data strategy. So let's jump in and let's start with monologues and dialogues. And by the way, I have a bunch of OpenAI and other images here that are just generated by feeding my morning walks. So Mike, I go on morning walks and talk to myself. People think I'm on the phone. I'm talking to a recording device, then I transcribe it, and then I feed it into the AI to generate images of what my thoughts are like. It's a mess, but it's a lot of fun.
It's amazing. I feel like AirPods have made it okay for me to talk to myself while I walk now, which is great.
Yes, it is. It's a magical way if you all can give it a try. You just record yourself, send it to Descript, transcribe it, and then introduce it to the AI. I've written a blog post of all the tools I use to do that. But let's start with this, which is, look, brand marketing in general has been about storytelling for a very long time. When I say Nike, people think athletics. They think the story of the championing the athlete. When you say Apple, you think different. The best brands storytell. The problem is, over the last number of years, we moved away from storytelling into this creepy marketing monologue, right? Where the marketing monologue is, I need to know everything about you, where you are, who's your friends, what you read, what's in your garbage. Also, I can send you what? The right message to the right person at the right time. That's not good. That's the creepy stuff that we're going to get away from. Now, when we think about this, I always try to tie back to academic theories. And this one has a real interesting academic background, which is monologues. When you look at a theory back from 1956, called information processing theory. What it says is that fundamentally we're overwhelmed. We can't process all the monologues we get. You've probably seen studies where it says on the average day, someone in New York City is hit with something like 100,000 ads as they walk down the street to and from their job. It's that intense. And so you can't process it. And people ultimately don't feel like they're being heard when they're being pushed. How many of you have gotten those crappy LinkedIn messages like, dear brackets, name here, right? Like, it's just bad. It's just not helping. And so what we really need to get to is dialogue. Now, I want you to think of the best small business experience you've had in the last 10 years. For me, I'm going to use like a toy store in a small town in New Jersey. I was looking for a toy, but it was a therapeutic toy. Mike and I were talking earlier. My wife is a pediatric OT. And so she sent me to get this toy. And I walked in, I said, do you have this type of toy? And the person comes out from around the counter. She's like, well, actually, we do have those grabbers that are designed for that. Let me walk you over there. Walked me over there, had a conversation. That is what people want when you think about personalization. They want that engagement level, that they're being listened to. And this also comes from another theory, no joke, which is information foraging theory. Now, this one sounds funny, but it is. It basically says that when people look for information in search or dialogue, what they're trying to do is find value for this information. They're trying to like find little pieces of goodness so they don't have to hunt around. This actually comes from, we used to behave the same way when we would walk through forests as human beings. We would forage for food. This is the same thing we all do on the internet. We literally are trying to forage for little pieces of information. Think of the last time you planned a trip for you and your family. You probably ended up with 37 tabs open in your browser, all with different elements where you were foraging to find information. The problem with this is it's very difficult if people don't give you direct answers. Prior to AI, we couldn't do that. Like, look, Google's the most amazing technology we've had up until this point in terms of access to content. But Google and centralized search caused something called the necessity of the monologue, which is every one of us as brands and businesses and marketing, we push out monologue after monologue, because if you do that, you have the chance to maybe show up in search. And that's only going to accelerate, right? Now that we have infinite content production in generative AI, where does this go, right? You're already seeing a lot of people freaking out about this. In fact, here's case study number one. Hopefully everybody, let me know in the chat if you've seen this. But this is this gentleman, his name is Ward, no relation. I don't want to get, tomatoes thrown at me by the SEOs in the crowd. But this gentleman took another company's website, crawled all of their information, their sitemap, and then generated like 1,800 articles and ranked really high. Now, as of today, looks like Google is manually shutting them down because they broadcast that hey, we used AI to write 1,800 articles and we stole almost all the traffic from a competitor. Now, that's not good, right? That's a bad demonstration. Many people are like, oh, that's morally, but can I offer, how different is that than what most SEOs do anyway? They literally analyze every keyword of every competitor's website, and then they go and write articles. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's what you should do at scale, but we're all doing something of this. And if you think that generative AI isn't going to completely flood the internet with 1 billion blog posts on summer gardening tips by next summer, you're out of your mind. It is going to be a wasteland of content that is not helpful. And Google is going to have to change the way their algorithms work. Look, they've already started. Google started deprecating that if you have how-tos or FAQs in your schema markup, they're not giving you the featured snippet anymore. Why? Well, because if everyone's just going to generate billions of posts on the same topics, they're just going to use SGE to generate it. That way they don't have to link to any of you. I don't mean that meanly. That's probably the right thing to do. But they have to figure out how to figure out a way to deal with infinite content. So I don't think this is a good example, but this is one case study. If you haven't looked it up, please go look it up. It's fascinating. And the vitriol and anger from the SEO community, except a few technical SEOs are like, wait a second. I understand you're upset, but you realize we all do this anyway. We're just doing it slower and less efficiently. This person just did it extremely efficiently. So you got to look at both sides. Now, why does this matter? Well, as I said earlier, when we talk about information processing theory, there is a problem with information overload. In fact, as information scales to infinity, which is where we're going, right? That's what conversational AI is doing, generative AI. It's going to scale to infinity. But I think you all know this. Humans, when you have too much information, our ability to process that actually declines. This is me at the grocery store where my wife's like, hey, bring home a bottle of, whatever, Zinfandel. And if there's 15 bottles, I'm okay. I can figure it out. If there's 600 bottles, I get dumber the longer I stand in front of those bottles of wine. That is information overload. And it's actually, cognitive psychology speaking, it's related to your fight or flight mechanism. It's too much, and you actually start to paralyze in how you think about it. And so when that happens, that presents a problem. Now, this is going to be the internet for the next several years, thanks to generative AI. It's going to bring scalability. But the alternative is, instead of generating too many monologues like that guy did by stealing that content or generating content off of a sitemap, is you could also launch search and chat using AI where you can have dialogues with people. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. Now, why is this happening now? Because I know we all thought the internet was access to knowledge. It's not. I think we all know it's access to content now. AI is where you can actually start getting answers to the how and why questions. That's very different. Why? Because today, if I say, hey, I want to get lunch, it will give me a who, a what, a where, a when, those factual information. But if I say, like, why should I go there for lunch? It's going to synthesize all this data of how close I am, what the budget is, what reviews are saying. It's going to pull together what looks like knowledge to us. Now, why is that important? Because has everyone ever heard the phrase correlation is not causation? This is like my favorite thing in academia that drives me nuts, which is you're right. And I understand why we say that. But do you realize that humans don't do anything without causation? Like literally you all are on this podcast and I'm on with you because we're trying to make a connection about a great topic. The reality is we have a causal reason to be here. It's not because it's correlated, it's causal. And so everything, these words, how and why really matter. And I'll give you a fascinating statistic. So at Yext, we power the data for over 2 million businesses online and over 200 platforms. So if you look up a business and it's in Google, Bing, now OpenAI because of Bing, all these platforms, we're the ones that take the objective factual knowledge of who the business is, what doctors work there, what insurance they take, what's on the menu, all that stuff, and we feed it out. So we did a study where we looked at all of the Google searches from today, last year, from this day, 6 months out. And in 6 months, the number of Google searches that had the words how or why in it since the launch of conversational or generative AI went up 38%. That is bonkers. I want you to understand that is such a massive change that people are now asking Google, expecting they're going to trigger some level of generative experience or some level of AI. And that's also because they are learning to search differently than we have for the longest period of time. Like for the longest period of time, we spoke keyword. Now people are starting to put full on causal intent into these queries. And why is that happening? Well, part of it is everybody keeps talking about adoption, right? So thanks, Ed. I like the word bonkers. I don't know why. So when you look at this, the adoption rate, right, of ChatGPT is almost a straight line. And Mike, I know you all have covered this because it's so fast. And when I look at this, you know, I think it's a little unfair though. I don't think we're adopting ChatGPT. I think that's it's a misalignment of measurement, right? When Netflix came out, it was originally CD-ROMs in the mail. You had to learn how to use this, okay? The difference here is it's not adoption. What's actually happening is you're not adopting this. It's that you're just no longer behaving in totally unnatural ways. Like none of us walk around when we're thinking of a new product or service and are like,
shoes, Nike, size 9, near me, Boca Raton.
I don't talk like that. Do you talk like that? No one talks like that. So you had to unlearn everything you learned from the ages of 2 to now in conversation and learn something called keyword speak, which is amazing how fast people learn it, but it's not actually efficient. And it's very hard to find what you want. As I like to say now, close only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and search. And the reason why that is it's a way for them to show you more ads for things you don't need. You have to start to think about breaking this out, that if you can have a full conversation in 3 back and forths of conversational AI with a brand, we can get you exactly to the answer you need with no ads. That is crazy for where we think this is going. And that's why marketers have to adjust. So another way to say this is in the past, right? Computer savvy humans had an advantage. Think of all of your careers. You're all probably pretty technical. You had an advantage over people that weren't technical. But now that the machines, the computers are human savvy, that advantage is gone. anyone can now speak to a machine and learn a technology. The cognitive burden is almost zero. That is going to be what all of 2024 is about. Satya Nadella already put in his letter to shareholders that it's the year of co-pilots. Every system out there, anyone's going to be able to speak to it and get that. If you haven't read that letter, everyone, it's definitely worthwhile. So what do we do as marketers? Well, as marketers, you have to start thinking about the dialogue continuum, right? You're still going to do monologues, and you're marketers. You're going to absolutely use generative AI to do 1 billion blog posts on whatever your brand or your clients need. But the reality is, once they get to your site or they're using another AI, you have to figure out when should you use AI to have a conversation and when should you get the human involved. And what's really neat about this is AI finally scales that toy store interaction of a clerk behind the desk having a good conversation with you. And then at some moment, you switch out the AI for a human saying, this is a valuable discussion. And that's a very big area to go. Thanks, Mike, for putting that in there. Now, what is that going to mean? A lot of people are talking about trust when it comes to AI. And what you have to understand is, trust is both an experience, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Trust is an experience, it's experiential, but it's also an emotion. It is the release of the chemical oxytocin in your brain. When you think about a brand you trust, it's because you've had multiple experiences. Now, dialogue is the best way to do that, having an ongoing engagement. And that's where you will build trust. That's where generative AI and conversational AI will do well. So here's another case study. Instead of building 1 billion blogs, I can't share with you the actual client that's doing this. So I'm showing you a client that this is a demo of what this client is doing. But we have clients where they're saying, listen, doctors in our hospital system, they have 10,000 doctors. The doctors are super busy and they don't want to sit down and write their biography. But we have all the knowledge, the facts about the doctors. And so what we're doing is we're using generative AI not to write blog posts, but if we can write really unique data or biographies that capture the facts, that gets very interesting. Because what we're doing is we're not using the AI to make stuff up or hallucinate. We're saying to the AI, here's all the facts, just translate that into a nice little biography. So one of the areas I think everyone here should be thinking about is not generative AI on the blog side. You should be thinking about generative AI as small structured sort of portions of pages and content where you have a unique and authoritative knowledge set, which is for this doctor who's not real, this Dr. Barnett Gibbs. It has all of his fellowships, where he went to school, what insurance he takes. That stuff is gold. That stuff, if you feed to a search engine, it's not going to look at it going, oh, this is AI generated. It's completely proprietary, your knowledge using generative AI. And I think this is a great way to really think about it as marketers. Hopefully everybody understands that one. And what's cool about that is as soon as you've done that, you also then can have a chat experience, because you can use chat. In this case, this is ours, but you can use really a lot of the chat systems to do what's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And what that is when I ask a question like, where did Dr. Gibbs go to school? The AI is not guessing where he went to school. We have hooked it up to where it only gets the answer from this knowledge set. And that's, again, it's not saying Yext is the only one how you do it. I'm just saying this is how you do it. You find and store the factual knowledge, and then you use the AI just to translate it. Now, as you do that, there are many different AI tools you can choose from that. I certainly think GPT-4 is still the hands down leader, but there are so many advancements every day. You should be taking almost an AI agnostic approach to this, which is if someone leapfrogs tomorrow, you're going to want to be able to unplug that and plug it in. That's why I'm saying your data set is the thing you've got to get correct, because you're going to be plugging in different AI all the time as these advance.
Or for instance, if OpenAI almost implodes, for instance, over the last couple of weeks, right?
Come on, Mike, that would never happen. Like that's so outlandish. I don't know what you're saying. Yes, that was, wow, what a ride. Okay, so how do you do this? And so this is where I was talking about the lean data approach. Again, I feed, so I went on this long walk and I'm like, draw me something that shows data gluttony versus lean data. Look, marketers, you have bought into this vision of we need all the data. You don't need all the data. In fact, data is not a new oil. Data is calories. And the more calories you're taking in that you don't use, you're just getting obese. which means you can't take advantage of the data because you have too much of it. So what you really want is a lean data strategy, which is if let's say I'm Wendy's, right? Like a burger joint, and somebody comes to the website and enters the chat or a search, and it says something like, hey, what do you have for breakfast? That query, that piece of information is probably worth, I don't know what an average breakfast is today. I would say, $8, but maybe it's $37 if you're in London, but it changes, right? But that's worth that much money, that query, that dialogue. But if someone says, hey, do you have a Wendy's franchise person I can talk to? I'm thinking of opening one in Akron, Ohio. That query could be worth millions of dollars to Wendy's. Not all questions are equal. And so lean data strategies basically say, let's see what they ask, and then let's prioritize what knowledge we give to the AI to optimize for that strategy. Does that make sense? It's sort of a way to sort of get to the nucleus faster. So when we look at it, this is Yext looking at people first search for you, then they go to your website, then they look at your ratings, then they talk to a chat. All of these things are just part of the dialogue continuum. But whether you're selling tacos or Teslas determines on when you get the generative AI out of the way and you bring a human in. And that's also, it's not just what they're asking, it's the tone in which they're asking it. So the words they use, are they swearing? Do they keep saying human? Like if they're throwing out, they need a human, then do that. But it's not always the case. You have to look at the context. So now, as I said, not all dialogues are equal, but I have some good news there. The reason why I espouse this lean data approach is I've roughly been involved with probably 400 knowledge graphs since starting at Yext over a decade ago. When in doing that, we found a very interesting thing, which is for all the questions that people ask about a brand, it follows the Pareto principle almost perfectly, which is 20% of the knowledge in your graph answers 80% of the questions. It's like this. It goes within a few weeks or months, you pretty much are answering the majority, 4 out of 5 questions. The last questions, the ones out here, these are high value. And these questions down on the bottom are the ones that prevent your customer support team from being overwhelmed, because it's just like, how do I log in? That's the type of thing that you can really handle very well with AI. So all of these strategies are to say, when I look at where the world is headed, this is the chart that shows how many data points each of the Googles, the Bings, and the others of the world take from Yext. It's grown 700% since 2015. Why? Because back then they just wanted to know for Google Maps or Apple Maps whether Wendy's was on this corner or a doctor was at this office. Now they want to know everything. They want to know what are the measurements for the wheelchair access? What are all these other pieces? So AI is going to demand objective knowledge from your brand. See, does everybody remember Mapplegate? It was Apple when Apple Maps, and it put like someone in a desert or a lake and they almost died. I don't know. It was bad. Now it took Apple years to get people's trust back that the objective knowledge, not subjective, not like, is this a good way to get there? I'm just saying, is this thing there? That is the same thing is going to happen with AI, which is you as a brand have to feed your objective knowledge to all of these platforms. Because if those AI mislead someone and take them or give them an answer that's not objectively what you would tell them as the owner of that knowledge, we have a problem. That's going to decline the actual usage. And so that's one of those big ones that you have to look at. So all this is to say, how do you do this? How do you future-proof your strategy? Well, I hate to say it again, but like your AI strategy is just your data strategy. And in saying that, it drew this beautiful image of where is this all going. And what you're going to see is there is going to be a split between how objective facts are pushed out into search the way they are today. That's going to scale. It's going to be all AI generated with human oversight. And then you're going to have subjective actual dialogue experiences. What I mean by that is you need the right-hand side with things like content and reviews and it's SEO at scale and structured data. You have to keep doing all of that because that's how you're still going to be found. But the left-hand side is when they land on your page or your digital experience or your chat, that's going to be dialogue-based. Like, I don't know, I'd love to see a show of hands. Like, how many people think in the next 3 years, we're going to be talking less to machines, right? Like, I'm sorry, everyone, it's over. Like the monologue, let me show up and start. It's over. That is, you have to do it, but that is going to change, because if I instead get on with a chat with Nike's chat, or I'm talking to one of my personal AI about Nike sneakers, and the answers from Nike are in that chat, that's the next realm. That's the new SEO. And it's not search experience, rather search engine optimization. It's search experience optimization. It doesn't matter what engine it's in, because it's going to actually be in the AI. So how do you do this? Well, imagine all the data you have, the intrinsic data that you have as a business. Intrinsic just means it's created by your business. It's not like the Forbes top 50 hospitals list. That's created by someone external to the hospital. I'm talking about all the data that you have as a retailer or whatever it may be. The way we do this is we just say, hey, what's the lean data that you know the AI should have, or that search should have? We take that, like, where's your store? What do you sell? And like, what very simple things. What are the FAQs? That has to be human curated. You don't want to hook up AI to your data lake or to all of your data. It's a very bad idea, because if you do that, you are giving unfettered access to anyone at your company that accesses it to be able to ask some really dark questions really fast. Remember, it's got all your emails for the last 20 years in that thing. Don't do that. You need to curate it, because when you curate it, you're going to have you as the business owner, their legal and compliance department, they're going to have to sign off on that curated knowledge that's now going to be fed to AI. Because if the regulators come knocking, look, regulators have not regulated all this stuff yet, but it's going to be the same flavor as GDPR in Europe, which is GDPR Article 22 says, if you have an automated decision by a machine, you must be able to explain why the machine made that decision. So if Mike gets one mortgage rate and I get a second one, a different one, you can't go, oh no, AI. You can't do that. You actually have to say, no, Mike is really, really bad credit, which is totally true. I don't know, Mike. So you go through and you're like, okay, there's reason, right? So if you go through this, you have to be able to show these are the data points that went into the AI. So it has to be curated. Now, once you have that, you're going to produce, as marketers, both the dialogues and the monologues. The monologues bring back things like keyword data density, or they bring back search results, or Google Search Console, or anything like that. The dialogues I will offer bring back even more valuable data, which is, what are people asking your brand? What are people talking to you about? What like, use AI to capture that. You feed that to a different set of AI tools, which builds your reporting. And this is the lean data approach. You basically look, what did they ask us last week that clearly they're now thinking about as customers in the chat and in the search? And you go back into your data lake and identify, hey, let's add this knowledge to the curated knowledge. So it's the loop where what the conversation, every great business owner knows that when you talk to your customers, you learn A, what they don't understand about you and you need to make clearer, and B, you learn what their needs and desires are for the future and how to build that. You can use this data. Now, again, SEOs and others have been using data like keyword information research on their competitors, just like that guy that stole it for years. But this is where AI can actually start to help you with that process. And so with that, that's how I would actually approach it from a lean data perspective. And this is the third case study. This is actually what I think a lot of the future is going to look like. This is, again, I can't show you a live client just because of corporate disclosures, but basically what you're going to see is search and chat are going to merge. You're going to get away from, like, to put it sort of humorously, this is the #1 digital experience ever created. Is that even arguable? There's nothing even close by all metrics, okay? This page has not changed in 20-something years, okay? This page does not have drop-down menus. If you go to any of your brand websites, all of us are sitting there like we're all going to be so upset 5 years from now when we look back and go, I cannot believe how much of my life was in meetings with people debating what goes in the drop-down menus, because nobody's going to use drop-down menus. Nobody uses it today. Only you use it because you're like, oh, they don't want to search. They don't want to use chat. Of course they do. 97% of people start with search. Why do you think they don't want to keep using it? It's because the tech wasn't there, and now the tech is there. So you can do it really well. But death by drop-down menu, that ship has sailed. So it's going to look like this. You come to a ski shop, and then I hit a button and I ask it a question, and it's going to merge search and chat, having a conversation while showing people what they can do for them. And that's really going to pull together a very different digital experience. And what we do on the back end is, this is for that ski shop. I can actually see all of the things that people are asking about in real time and then go build more content, like hit a button and generate better descriptions for the Black Crow skis because it's starting to get more interest than it had last week. So you really start to push through all of this. So excellent. So again, your AI strategy is really your data strategy. And I think knowing that we're only 1 year to the anniversary, to the day of what has changed, it is astounding how fast this is moving. And I think it's going to get even faster. And so for that reason, getting your data in order and lockboxed and compliant and ready is the path for every marketer to prepare to enable for that next stage of AI. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mike, and we can open up a discussion.
Oh my gosh, Christian, that was fantastic. And what I love about this is there's so much talk about generative AI, but so few people are really zooming out in the way you've zoomed out and communicating to people. This isn't just about writing a blog post with AI, though we can talk about that and that can be helpful. It is about so much more. This is really a sea change in the way we are thinking about and structuring our experiences with our customers. And frankly, that should be the first and foremost thing at the top of your mind. How is this affecting customer experience?
Yeah, look, I can't agree more. And we're all still experimenting with this thing and learning. And I think that's great. We're sort of learning with it. In a weird way, it's learning us as much as we're learning it, which is a little scary, but it's happening. And so as we do that, it's going to change the entire engagement model for a consumer. But I, for one, I want to say in 2018, it was either Forrester or Gartner. They came out with a report and it pissed off the marketing, like MarTech stack people pretty badly. It said by 2025, over 80% of brands will abandon personalization due to privacy concerns and others. Now, mind you, they were the ones telling everybody to build out the CDP, the CRM, the tracking cookies. So, they're analysts. They always say buy and sell at the same time. That's how they stay employed. But when you look at this, what they said wasn't wrong, which is we are going to abandon creepy personalization. Instead, what we're going to realize is if I come to your donut shop and I ask you about powdered jelly donuts in a dialogue, you should personalize it by showing me powdered jelly donuts. Like the dialogue unlocks personalization in a way that does not require any tracking, because based on the context of the page and the dialogue that ensues, you can really actually help them instead of pushing monologue after monologue and debating what pop-up window should show up when I land on your page. That is not a good experience. We know that.
So there are a few burning questions I have that we're going to cover on a few slides here. We've got a ton of great questions coming in from the audience, so we'll try to answer as many of those as possible over the course of this discussion. But I do want to just get your take right now on, it's been a year. We've come a long way since ChatGPT came out. In your opinion, with what you're seeing in the marketplace, where are marketers at with generative AI?
So it's interesting. It's actually a bit by market cap, I will tell you. So the first thing is that the largest companies, they're very nervous about this, and there's copyright issues. There's a lot of things that they're worried about. And so it's a little bit more locked down. But when you talk to everybody in the room at those large companies, they're all using generative AI in some way on their personal computer or at home. It's sort of like, I don't know if everyone knows this, I'm dating myself, but in the 1970s, calculators became relatively economically feasible for most people to buy. Up until that point, you had to be really wealthy to have a calculator. So people started saying, ban them. So the public school system across America, the NEA, banned calculators. What did everybody do? They just used them at home. So like we're experiencing the history, it's rhyming again, which is we're trying to understand like, how do you prepare this? Whereas at mid-market or smaller accounts, it's like a free-for-all. They are all using it. They are all trying to figure out how to use it. Like, because it's not that they're not concerned, but they don't have the concern of a Fortune 500 public company. And I can absolutely understand that. So it sort of depends on where you are. Most of the industries are following the classic curves of adoption rates, which is you have retail e-com way out in front using this stuff. I mean, they've been rewriting product descriptions on Amazon, like at a rate you cannot imagine with AI. So it's by industry, but I never walk in a room and someone's like, yeah, no, we're not going to use it. That was what it felt like in March. And now it's like, nope, how are we going to use it? How do we get started? And my answer is always the same to them. We've got to get your data in a strategy, because the danger here is you can't hook this up. Like, do you know Viking stoves, Mike?
Yes.
It's okay. For everyone that doesn't, it's like a real high-end nice stove. I don't have one, but they're really expensive and they're really good. But their website has 14,000 pages because they've been pushing monologues out. But if you hook up GPT to that website and ask it a question like, how did the Vikings conquer Ireland using stoves as boats back in the 1400s? It will write you a confident freaking story using that website because it can recombinatorially write whatever it wants. That's not the way to do this. Instead, you have to limit it and say, no, here's the knowledge you can use. You can't just write what you want. So you're going to have to, people are really going to have to think about when they put this out in the wild. One of the other areas I'll tell you that I think marketers are getting smart on is they're trying to use it internally to sort of see like, hey, what are we getting out of Google? What are we getting out of our ad spend? They're almost using code, the code interpreter concept of feed it a spreadsheet and see what the value or the ROI is. That's pretty interesting stuff.
That's a really good point. And it comes into this next topic here, which is I'm just so curious, and we get questions about this daily, about how are marketers actually using these tools to do things like increase productivity. And I know in my own work, which I can share in a little bit, like it has skyrocketed my own productivity, but I was curious how this is working on at scale. And what's really cool is Microsoft recently came out with some of the research you see here. They took the early users of Microsoft Copilot, which is their AI assistant across major Microsoft apps like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, basically an AI assistant to help you generate content in those tools and get more out of them. And they surveyed some of the early users on various areas of how they were improving using Copilot. And some of the stuff coming out of these early stats is crazy. I mean, 85% of people said it is helping them get a good first draft faster. 75% of people are saying it's saving them time by finding files. 71% say it is saving them time on mundane tasks, and so on and so forth. How are you seeing marketers being more productive with some of these tools?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things here is when we think about productivity tools today, we predominantly are thinking about the core SaaS applications that regardless of what job you're at, they have. Word processing, spreadsheets, graphs, presentations, accounting, CRM, all of those have a real, I won't say easy adoption, but it's basically this way. Remember I said earlier that, tech savvy humans had an advantage. Well, the tech savvy humans are the ones that are also going to take advantage of this first in terms of productivity, which is when you put Copilot on top of Excel, I kind of know how to use Excel. So it accelerates very quickly the value I can get. So you always have in these adoption hype cycles, you have these curves. They're also the Dunning-Kruger curve where people think they know way more than they do. And then they find out, they're like, oh my God, I don't know how to use Excel at all. This is amazing. So you're going to have this process. But I think what you're first seeing here and what we see with marketers in general is the adoption inside of what they already know. And that's why I think Microsoft's strategy is very bright here, is get these co-pilots out because it's going to scale that individual productivity. And a lot of people are like, again, everyone's worried about jobs and these are all important concerns. But Mike, if I think of the backlog that you all have at Marketing AI Institute and that I have at Yext, I got like 3 years of stuff I can't wait to build. There's a lot of productivity we could gain before I would ever need to get rid of someone, right? Like it's a lot. And so that's a really interesting first adoption rate is going to be in the marketing.
That's fantastic. And if we go to the next slide here, what's really cool is that they also looked at performance. So, saving time is fantastic. We all do like 3 to 5 jobs at the same time, even though we're supposed to have one. So using generative AI for productivity is fantastic. But I love how they also dived into how is this actually helping you get better results? Because I don't know about you, but when I am saving time with AI, that's fantastic. But I really do also want to use these tools to produce a better output. And Microsoft found that Copilots were helping people do just that. I mean, 72% of people said it helped them generate ideas while writing. 68% said it helps them jumpstart the creative process. And 68% said it helps them improve the quality of their work or output. And I love in the chat here, Miriam said, I'm a writer of 25 plus years and can honestly say that ChatGPT has given me room to be more creative.
Yeah.
So it's not just about productivity or like lower the number of hours in a spreadsheet. It's also about empowering you in the right way to do better, more creative work. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Absolutely. I was blown away even with 3.5. I was blown away by people just hammering it on this idea of, it's not going to be creative. It doesn't have the human creative spark. And I'm like, time out, people. It's been trained on all human writing for the last 100 years, which includes what most humans really consider creative is basically analogistic thinking. It's that this reminds me of this, and here's the connection and why. And for a lot of writers or storytellers, that's a critical understanding. But if you train it on all the analogistic thinking and writing that's been written for the last 100 years, as it turns out, it's quite good at that. And so it's not just the Dr. Seuss, rewrite this as a poem from Dr. Seuss stuff. It's actually really, really good at this. So I think if you're not using these tools to really try what you can do creatively, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You should speak to it almost like your writing assistant or your teaching assistant or your research assistant, and speak to it. Even say, good job, but can you cut down on the adverbs? Like, by the way, somebody asked, what are great prompts? Can I just offer everybody? Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing. It's one of the best books I've ever read, and it's his story of becoming a writer. And in the book, he says, the road to hell is paved with adverbs. He's like, they ruin your writing, they weaken every point, they're unnecessary, kill them. And he's notorious for this. Now, just put in every one of your new prompts, no adverbs. It will still sneak a few in because there's so many adverbs in the training data, but it drastically improves the output I found in one of the simplest things. So like, I guess my point is I've always liked that. I just told the AI as my research assistant, don't use adverbs, treat it like a person, and you'll be amazed at the creativity that it'll bring to every project.
That's such a great point. And as someone with a writing background, writing is my trade. It's how I got my start as a journalist a million years ago. I really understand when people who write for a living are scared of this technology or apprehensive, but I also think it's probably the best time in history to be a writer, because guess who's really good at expressing thoughts very clearly and precisely? Writers. That's your job. Good writing is clear thinking. So your ability as a writer to prompt these tools is actually probably better than some other people that maybe have more of a technical discipline and are approaching it that way, which is really interesting. You make that point.
Yeah, I also think we're still in the beginning stages. So as I said earlier, my wife is a pediatric OT, and myself and my kids joke her all the time. She's not super technical. And so when I show her ChatGPT, she's like, okay, now what? Like, what do you do? Because she's used to technology being like, here's the drop down, here's the 5 things. Like, isn't this what you want? Like, it's not there. And at the same time, once we started asking it really complex therapizing questions around very specific syndromes and potential ways to do at-home exercises, stuff that's not readily available on the internet, it was incredibly creative in what you could do for certain syndromes. And it's one of those things where I share it because I think what's going to happen next is, remember how everybody was like, learn prompt engineering. That's the future. It's not, it was never going to be the future, people. It was always going to be abstracted out. I actually think what's happening next is the AI is going to be taught prompt engineering to prompt you as the human, which is right now, you're like, oh, the humans that know how to prompt it, they get the benefit. But pretty soon the AI comes back and says, hey, like if I say with my teenage daughter, like, hey, what college should I go to? The AI should be saying, well, let me ask you a few questions. Like, how are your grades? What are your scores? What region do you want? Do you know what you want to study? Though it's going to start prompting us, and that takes us into the next stage. Right now, we're in the conversational stage. But the next stage is the focal stage, where it helps humans focus, get out of that data overload and focus on topics. And then it moves into the last stage, which it actually becomes a trusted advisor in people's lives. Now that's where it gets a little scary, but that's one of the ones that's going to come next. And I'm not talking 2030. I'm saying you're literally just with the tools we have today, you could be going from today to next year to focal to the next year to decisional AI. And then after that, it gets a little bit, that's when people start getting into autonomy. And I think it's a dangerous road to go further than that.
There is certainly a long and interesting road ahead here, and we're getting a ton of audience questions. So, Christian, I'm wondering if we just stop sharing our screen, jump onto video, and let's try to tackle a bunch of these in the final 10 minutes or so here. So, first up, I did want to ask what you think of this audience question about how is generative AI going to impact copywriting in general, our ability to tell stories, to communicate information, etc.
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. Number one, Mike, most people don't have your background and they don't have the writing background or the writing expertise. I actually think this is going to be unbelievable, especially I've known a lot of people, including one of my children with ADHD, and with an inability to really stay focused and on topic. And their emails, you get emails from these people like, where are you going with this? You're all over the place. Okay, that is going to be conquered by this. So in some ways, I think for the basic writing skills, if you think of how we delved down into texting and keywords as the demise of conversation, this actually helps people that maybe aren't the best at conversation have more intelligent conversations in terms of the audience they're trying to target. So I think that's actually quite good. When we talk about copywriting and the building like content, I think the Copilot studies are really informative, which is you should be using it to create ideas, or if you're stuck, all of those things matter. But where I'm really excited is what most writers will tell you, and we've all dabbled in this, is when you write, it's very hard to also do the research and to get the links and all the other things you're trying to build in. That's actually a huge portion of the process for anyone that's written or writes. I am amazed at how much better GPT and others are getting at that now. In fact, it's similarly at Yext, right? So I have all this facts and knowledge, like hundreds of thousands of facts about a business. And I can tell it, write me a blog post about summer gardening tips, but make sure you include from our home, like we have a huge home, like it's like a Home Depot for Europe is one of our clients. And it literally, but I want you to include 10 products that we sell that make sense in the blog post with links to them with this. And it's mind blowing how fast it does that. And it's highly factual. I think if you stick to objective facts inserted into AI drafts, you get a really interesting outcome for scale. So I think it'll help writers a lot in that sense, even to the point of, we all know about the lawyer, I think it was in Massachusetts, that like brought made up precedent cases. Did you hear about this? It was terrible.
Yes.
Using ChatGPT. Again, like in a way, like I know he shouldn't have done it, but like my heart goes out to him. Like that just, I really do feel for people that are the kids turning in homework with made up citations. The reality is it's getting a lot better at that. And it's going to continue to get better at that very quickly. So I think that's a big area it can help also with copywriting.
That's fantastic. And another question here that I'm kind of curious about your take on is, where do we see video and video content being a part of that new digital experience that
with the launch of Pika, P-I-K-A, that was pretty fascinating, as well as the new one where you can just highlight areas and it adds motion. So look, I think imagery in general starts to get pretty difficult. You're far more likely to be able to identify with pixel analysis something that's AI modified or generated in a photo. And we do actually have a little bit better opportunity to potentially watermark that stuff. That's never going to work in text. Textual analysis, if you run it through 3 different AI, no one would know what it is. You're not going to watermark. So images start to get really sort of both scary and interesting. So the first area of marketing that I've heard people doing it is now marketers that are going to go do a photo shoot, like of their restaurant or a photo shoot of products, they actually prompt the AI to generate 50 different potential photos And then the customer, before they do the shoot, goes, I really like number 7, 12, and 48. And they take those, and that's what they actually then do the shoot on. Whereas think of the reverse. You used to shoot for 5 hours to get the 50 shots, and then they pick 3, and you have to go back and shoot them again. This cuts all that out. So there's a great power in the image generation. And there's also great opportunity in like screenshotting dashboards, like of people's like data. You could screenshot it and say, hey, what changed from yesterday? There's amazing tools here that people aren't even really leveraging yet. But I think both creating image and quite frankly, maybe more upfront, the actual reading of an image, when that sort of gets to that next level, I think it will be unbelievable what it unlocks in terms of what you can do. Like I was at a conference and a friend of mine was giving a talk, and I took a photo and I asked the AI, tell me who this is, where he is, and then write me a Sherlock Holmesian style mystery of a murder that happens at the conference based on all you see in this photo. And it was magical. It was like, wow, hidden clues like in the slides behind him. Like if you look at the underlining and the link, like it made all this up and it all worked. I'm like, there's so much more going on here that people have not tapped into.
Wow, that is a really fun use case, but
it's fun. I sent it to him. He was dying. He's like, this is,
I bet.
And it was one photo. If you strung together 30 photos, you have a whole story.
No kidding. Wow. In our last few minutes here, I want to try to tackle a couple more questions. I'm going to try to roll together a few of them that we're getting. Someone was asking about, I'm a marketing lecturer. What should we be putting in our curriculum? Some people asked about skills. In this new normal we're entering into, what do you see as some important skills or considerations marketers should look at in their own career?
Yeah. So there's remember the Karate Kid? I forget. I think it's the second one. The Mr. Miyagi's, on the wall, it says karate for self-defense only. That's rule number 1. Then rule number 2, he reads it, he goes, first rule, learn rule number 1. Rule number 1 here is use the tools. You should be trying everything. And I hate to say that's like a curriculum thing. I'm saying you need to be using it, and not in a way like, oh, I tried it. I'm saying you need to be using it because it's going to unlock for you how you want either your students to think about it or your team to think about it, or how you think it could help you in your career. It's not enough. So rule number 2 is go back to rule number 1, use it. Because I think what it will do for you is open up your mind. For example, I'm actually in school pursuing an advanced degree, and I'm blown away by, you can talk to it about, hey, what would be a good outline for how to tackle this game theory problem? And it will give you that starting point, but then you can dive in much deeper from there. So I think for most people, you should have certainly an understanding of prompting. You should have an understanding of what works, what doesn't. You should build, if you haven't yet, build one workflow, just one workflow of, hey, I want to write a blog post, but I want AI to assist me. I'm using this prompting series to help me write the title, this for the summary, this for the TLDR, this for this, and this for the image, and get it to where you really like each of your prompts. And then run them all and see what you get. Like that's the type of thing you want to keep trying, because I think the question of what is the skill set today and what's going to be important later, it's almost too hard to answer. It's like Ethan Mock was talking about the price of putting your chips on the table on one thing that was just a bad bet. But if you can learn the general direction of where this is going, I think that's what's probably worth it more. But I would absolutely continue to work with GPT-4. Everyone should be doing that. But you should also really be looking at some of these other tools, like Swell is an interesting one. You can upload a podcast and it will create blog posts and things from it. Anything where you also take voice recordings and use prompts to generate content is really interesting, because I know everyone's worried about AI generated content. But if you talk to it for 15 minutes on a morning walk, it'll generate a blog post and it's your voice. It's not, you just have to prompt it. Hey, use as many of my words as I use them, but clean this up for me. It's very, very powerful.
That's fantastic. What a good note to end on. I would just add to that, if you are overwhelmed by the number of tools out there, the number of use cases, you can get so far by just keeping ChatGPT plus, GPT-4 open as you do everything. And it's not about necessarily using it for everything. Try to. You're going to get quickly into the habit of asking yourself, how do I make X, Y, and Z smarter using AI? And that's really the mindset shift. Is everything you do, there's probably today or in the near future going to be a smarter way to augment it with AI. So Christian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. This was astounding. We loved it. We got so many great comments about the presentation. Thank you for making the time. And thank you everyone for making the time to join us today for this webinar.
Well, thank you, everybody. And Mike, thank you as well. And Kathy, always a fan of what you guys are doing at Maycon. And I'll certainly see you there this year. But again, I truly appreciate it. I think this is such an amazing topic and what a fun day to do it on.
Couldn't agree more. Everyone have a great rest of your day.